I am not your ATM. Never again.
I'm going to start with the moment everything changed, because that's when I realized just how expendable I was to the people who supposedly love me most. Monday morning, 10:47 a.m. exactly. Yeah, I remember the time because that digital clock on the conference room wall was the last thing I saw before my body decided to stage a full rebellion right there in front of my boss and half the marketing department. 1 minute I'm clicking through slide 17 of Q3 revenue optimization strategies. Riveting stuff, really. And the next minute, my chest feels like someone's using my ribcage as a punching bag while simultaneously wrapping a python around my lungs. My head started spinning like I just chugged a bottle of tequila at a frat party, except without any of the fun that usually comes before that kind of dizziness. Peterson from accounting asked if I was okay, probably more concerned about missing his lunch break than my imminent demise. Real touching, Pete. I tried to play it cool, like maybe I was just having an allergic reaction to our office's motivational posters or something. But my voice came out as this weird wheeze that sounded like a deflating balloon. Then that ugly beige carpet we'd all been complaining about for 3 years suddenly rushed up to meet my face with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever. Lights out. When I came to, I was staring up at those awful fluorescent hospital lights that make everyone look like extras in a zombie movie. You know, the ones that flicker just enough to make you question your sanity and cast shadows that would make a funeral director jealous. My chest felt like someone had parked a small car on it, and there were more wires attached to me than a Best Buy display model. The nurse with kind eyes and scrubs covered in cartoon cats said, "Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare there, Marcus. You're lucky to be here." Lucky. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt lying there looking like a human Christmas tree with all those monitor wires. Then came Dr. Martinez, consulting his clipboard like it held the secrets of the universe. "Mr. Thompson, you've suffered what we call a cardiac event. A serious one. Your heart essentially said nope and took an unscheduled vacation." Cardiac event? Gotta love medical terminology. They make it sound like your heart threw a surprise party instead of nearly eliminating you. But I got the message loud and clear. I'd had a heart attack at 34. "We've contacted your emergency contact," Dr. Martinez continued. "Your wife, Sandra. She should be here soon." Should be. Those two words hung in the air like a bad smell. Sandra should be here. My wife of 6 years, the woman who promised to love me in sickness and in health, should be rushing through those hospital doors right about now, probably crying and clutching a teddy bear or some flowers she grabbed from the gift shop. But here's the thing about should be. It's about as reliable as a chocolate teapot. Night 1. Nothing. No Sandra bursting through the door, no frantic phone calls asking about my condition. Just me, the beeping machines, and a steady rotation of nurses who kept checking if I needed anything. Yeah, I needed something all right. I needed my wife to give a damn that I'd nearly shuffled off this mortal coil. Day 2 rolled around and still no sign of Sandra. The young doctor, Dr. Ruiz, kept patting my arm with that practiced sympathy they teach in medical bedside manner 101. "Rest up, Mr. Thompson," he'd say. "Someone should be here soon." Someone should be here soon. There's that word again, should. The nurses tried to be encouraging. "Traffic's probably bad," suggested the one with the cat scrubs. "Maybe she's stuck at work," offered another. "Sure, because nothing says loving spouse like prioritizing spreadsheets over your husband's coronary incident." The other patients on my floor had visitors constantly. Room 314 had so many flowers it looked like a funeral home exploded. Room 318's family brought enough food to feed a small army. Me? I got acquainted with every rerun of The Price is Right and became best friends with the vending machine down the hall. Day 3, and I'm starting to feel like Tom Hanks in that movie where he's stuck on the island, except instead of a volleyball named Wilson, I've got a heart monitor that beeps every time I think about how spectacularly my wife has failed at basic human decency. I'm lying there counting ceiling tiles when my phone finally makes some noise. For about half a second, my stupid optimistic heart does this little hopeful flutter. Maybe it's Sandra. Maybe she's been in some kind of accident herself. You know, all those ridiculous scenarios your brain conjures up when someone you love acts like you've suddenly become invisible. But no, it's Instagram. The notification reads, "Ashley Martinez tagged you in a photo." Ashley. That's Sandra's younger sister. The one who thinks influencer is a real job, and that taking pictures of her avocado toast constitutes contributing to society. I tapped the notification with the kind of morbid curiosity you get when you drive past a car accident. And there it is, in all its filtered, Valencia-tinted glory. A perfect little family tableau that looks like it came straight out of a Hallmark commercial. There's Ashley, blonde hair catching the sunlight just so, wearing one of those flowy sundresses that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Next to her is Sandra, my wife. Remember her? Looking radiant and carefree in a way I haven't seen in months. Standing behind them are Sandra's parents, William and Patricia. William's got his arm around Patricia, both of them beaming with the kind of joy you'd expect from people who just won the lottery, not people whose son-in-law is currently cosplaying as a human pincushion in the cardiac unit. The setting is picture perfect, too, there at Crystal Lake, about 2 hours north of the city, the place where Sandra and I had our first anniversary picnic. There's a red checkered blanket spread out on the grass, a wicker basket that probably came from some boutique that charges $50 for rustic charm, and enough gourmet sandwiches and artisanal beverages to feed a small European country. The caption is where Ashley really shows her true colors. Family day without the drama. Sometimes you need to surround yourself with people who lift you up. Blessed family time, no filter needed, lake life drama-free. But here's the real kicker. They tagged me. Actually tagged me in this monument to their collective sociopathy. Like they wanted me to see it. Like they wanted me to know that while I was lying in a hospital bed wondering if my ticker was going to give up the ghost permanently, they were out there living their best life without the inconvenience of my near-end experience cramping their style. The timestamp says the photo was posted about 2 hours ago, which means they were out there having their little family bonding session right around the time Dr. Ruiz was explaining to me that I'd need to make some significant lifestyle changes if I wanted to see 40. One of Sandra's cousins commented, "Where's Marcus?" And Ashley responded with a laughing crying emoji and the words, "He's taking some time to work on himself. We're supporting his journey." My journey, my damn journey, like I chose to have a heart attack. Something inside me shifts that day, not breaks. Breaking would be too dramatic, too sudden. It's more like something just shuts down. Quietly. Permanently. 4 days into my involuntary staycation at St. Mary's Hospital, I'd settled into what the staff probably called acceptance, but what I preferred to think of as strategic numbness. That's when my phone decided to have a goddamn seizure. I was half asleep when the buzzing started. Not just one buzz or two, but this relentless, angry vibrating that sounded like a pissed-off wasp trapped in a mason jar. 44 missed calls, 44. I counted them twice because surely that couldn't be right. The answer, apparently, was my loving wife and her dear old dad, William. You know, the same people who'd been too busy having lakeside picnics to check if I was still breathing for the past 4 days. The calls had started around 2 p.m. and just kept coming like some kind of digital tsunami. Sandra, William, Sandra, William, Sandra again. A perfect ping-pong match of desperation, bouncing back and forth between the two people who'd apparently just remembered I existed. Then came the text message. "We need you. Answer immediately." That was it. No "how are you feeling?" No "sorry we haven't been in touch." Just a demand wrapped up in the kind of tone you'd use to summon a dog who'd wandered too far from the yard. Like I was some kind of customer service hotline they could call when their life wasn't working the way they wanted it to. That's when I remembered something I hadn't thought about in probably 5 years. My Uncle Eddie, my mom's brother, the one who'd taught me how to fish and how to spot bees from a mile away. He'd been the one person in my family who'd never asked me for anything, never made me feel like my value was tied to what I could provide or fix or pay for. I hadn't called him since maybe Christmas, 2 years ago. Sandra had always found excuses why we couldn't visit him. Too far away. Not enough time. He lived in that tiny apartment that smelled like old books and pipe tobacco. She'd wrinkled her nose every time I mentioned him. But sitting there in that hospital bed, staring at 44 missed calls and a text message that treated me like a malfunctioning appliance, I found myself scrolling through my contacts until I found his number. My hands were shaking as I hit the call button. It rang once, twice, and then I heard his voice. "Hello? Uncle Eddie?" My voice cracked like I was 13 again. "It's me. It's your nephew." There was a pause, and then he said, "Which hospital?" Just like that. No questions about why I was calling after years of silence. No demands for explanations or apologies, just which hospital? Like he'd been waiting by the phone for exactly this call. And within an hour, 1 damn hour compared to 4 days of nothing from my wife. He was there. When Eddie walked into my hospital room, it was like watching a man step out of a time machine from when people actually gave a crap about each other. He was wearing the same old brown leather jacket I remembered from my childhood. His shoes were worn but polished. Everything about him screamed old school in the best possible way. The first thing he did was look me dead in the eye. Not at the machines, not at the charts, but right at me, like he was checking to make sure I was still in there somewhere. Then he pulled up that uncomfortable plastic chair and sat down like he had all the time in the world. "You look like hell," he said, which was probably the most honest thing anyone had said to me in days. No sugarcoating, no false cheerfulness, just straight-up assessment from someone who'd seen enough of life to know that sometimes people look like hell because they feel like hell. What happened next was peak Eddie Morrison efficiency. While I'd been lying there for 4 days feeling sorry for myself, he spent exactly 30 minutes asking the right questions, the ones the doctors should have been hearing from my wife. What were my symptoms before the attack? Had I been under unusual stress? What was my family medical history? But here's the kicker. Sandra could have answered exactly 0 of those questions. She didn't know that my dad had died of a heart attack at 52. She didn't know that I'd been having chest pains for weeks, but had been too busy covering her sister's boutique rent to see a doctor. She didn't even know what medications I was allergic to. But Eddie knew. He'd been paying attention for 67 years, while everyone else had been treating me like a walking credit card with legs. Then he quietly excused himself and came back an hour later with paperwork. Turns out my insurance had been playing the classic, let's deny coverage and hope this poor fool dies before he can appeal, game with some tests the cardiologist wanted to run. Eddie didn't argue with them. He just pulled out his checkbook, an actual paper checkbook, and wrote a check for the full amount. Just like that, problem solved. But that wasn't even the real bombshell. After the nurses left, Eddie pulled out his tablet and said those 4 words that would change everything. "Let's look at your finances now." I thought I knew where my money went. I made decent cash, lived in a nice house, drove a reliable car. Sure, things were tight sometimes, but that's just modern life, right? Wrong. So damn wrong it wasn't even funny. Eddie had somehow mapped out every single financial thread connecting me to Sandra's family. It was like watching someone perform an autopsy on your bank account. 5 accounts, 5 separate accounts that I'd somehow forgotten about, all tied to my name, all feeding money to various members of the Martinez family like some kind of financial IV drip. Sandra's personal checking account, which I'd added myself to for emergencies, and which she'd been using for her daily Starbucks habit. The business account for Ashley's boutique, which I'd co-signed for just until she got established 3 years ago. A credit line for William's perpetually failing home improvement projects. Even a damn auto insurance policy that covered Sandra's car, Ashley's car, and Patricia's ancient Honda. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, staring at the numbers on his tablet screen. "How did I not know about all this?" "Because they made sure you didn't know," Eddie said matter-of-factly. "Look here, Ashley's boutique rent gets automatically deducted from your business account on the 15th of every month. Has been for 3 years. You've been paying for her to play dress-up shop while she posts Instagram photos about being a girl boss entrepreneur. The rent alone was $1,500 a month. $1,500 every month for 3 years. That was $54,000 I'd unknowingly invested in my sister-in-law's delusion that she was the next big thing in overpriced scarves and motivational jewelry. Sandra's car insurance was actually covering 3 vehicles because family helps family, and I was apparently the designated family ATM. William's mortgage had gone into default twice in the past year, and both times mystery payments had appeared from accounts linked to my name, saving their perfect suburban house from foreclosure. "Holy crap," I said, scrolling through transaction after transaction. "I've been carrying all of them this whole time. I've been paying for their entire lifestyle." Eddie leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Son, they don't love you. They use you." 6 words. 6 simple words that cut through 8 years of marriage. And sitting there in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines that were keeping track of my broken heart, I finally understood why it had tried to quit in the first place. I wasn't a husband to Sandra. I wasn't a brother-in-law to Ashley. I wasn't a son-in-law to William and Patricia. I was a walking wallet with a pulse. And apparently not even a very reliable pulse at that. That night, While the nurses did their rounds and the machines beeped out their electronic lullabies, Eddie and I began cutting the cords one by one, account by account, automatic payment by automatic payment. It was like performing surgery on my own financial life, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. If you've ever wanted to see what happens when you cut off the financial life support to a family of professional parasites, let me tell you, it's like watching a nature documentary about what happens when the watering hole dries up in the middle of the savannah. The reaction was immediate. I'm talking less than 24 hours from the time Eddie and I started canceling automatic payments and closing accounts, and my phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree on steroids. Sandra's voicemail came first, a masterpiece of entitled indignation wrapped up in that fake concerned wife voice she'd perfected over the years. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing," she started, "but cutting off the accounts? Really? That's your solution? I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't the way to handle whatever midlife crisis you're having. You're being incredibly selfish right now, and frankly, it's embarrassing." Like adults, right? Because nothing says adult conversation like completely ignoring your spouse for 4 days while he's in the hospital and then lecturing him about responsibility when the money stops flowing. Ashley's text was even better. "My account balance is $19. Fix this." That was it. No, "How are you feeling?" Just a bank balance and a demand? $19. That's what 3 years of playing entrepreneur had gotten her without daddy-in-law bankrolling the whole operation. William chimed in with his own guilt trip. "You're destroying everything we built together. This family has been through enough without you throwing some kind of tantrum because you had a health scare. Everything we built together." According to William, the man who'd contributed exactly $0 to any aspect of my life, we had built something together. Apparently, my money and their spending habits constituted some kind of collaborative effort. Within 48 hours of the money getting cut off, Sandra's family went from family day without the drama to full-scale social media meltdown mode. They posted a video of their house completely stripped bare after an eviction notice. Empty rooms, boxes scattered around, that particular brand of chaos that happens when the sheriff shows up. Ashley was behind the camera, her voice shaking as she filmed room after room of their former middle-class paradise. "They took everything," she narrated. "Everything we worked for, everything we built, gone." The caption was, "They took everything. Guess who let them?" But here's the thing. They genuinely seemed to believe that the bank had stolen their house. They were playing the sufferers so hard you'd think they'd been struck by lightning instead of being served an eviction notice for not paying their mortgage. Except, I knew the truth. Thanks to Eddie and his magical tablet of financial revelation, I knew exactly where their mortgage payments had gone. For the past year, William had been using the mortgage money to fund Ashley's boutique inventory and Patricia's medical bills. They'd been robbing Peter to pay Paul. The bank hadn't stolen their house. They'd gambled it away, lost, and then acted shocked when the house always wins. But that wasn't the end. When the crying and guilt trips didn't work, when the social media pity party didn't bring me running back with my checkbook open, they decided to pull out their nuclear option. Eddie came to see me with an envelope. Inside were printed emails between Sandra, William, and someone named Marcus Hoffman from Hoffman and Associates Legal Services. Reading them was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. The first email, dated just 2 days after my heart attack, was from William to this Hoffman guy with Sandra copied. The subject line made my blood pressure monitor start beeping. "Emergency guardianship consultation. Urgent." "Mr. Hoffman," William had written, "as we discussed on the phone, my son-in-law has had a serious cardiac event and is currently hospitalized. His behavior since the incident has been increasingly erratic and concerning. He's made several irrational financial decisions that are putting his family's security at risk, and we're worried about his mental state. We need to explore options for temporary guardianship to protect his assets and ensure he gets the help he needs. Erratic behavior, irrational financial decisions, mental state. These motherf were trying to have me declared incompetent because I'd stopped paying their bills. They were literally attempting to get legal control over my finances by claiming that cutting them off was evidence of mental illness. Sandra had laid out a whole timeline of my supposed deteriorating mental health, starting with my decision to stop automatic payments and including such damning evidence as refusing to answer phone calls and isolating himself from family. They'd found a lawyer who specialized in emergency guardianships for people with diminished capacity due to medical events. The lawyer had laid out the whole strategy. They'd need medical documentation of my heart attack, witness statements about my erratic behavior, and evidence that I was making financial decisions that went against my established patterns. The goal was temporary guardianship, just long enough to restore financial stability and ensure proper medical care. Translation: just long enough to get back control of my bank account so they could continue bleeding me dry while I recovered from nearly dying. This is their nuclear option, Eddie said. When the crying and guilt trips didn't work, they decided to just take legal control. The most insidious part was how legitimate they'd made it sound. Reading their emails, you'd think they were genuinely concerned family members trying to help a beloved relative who'd clearly lost his mind after a traumatic medical event. But the cherry on top was Sandra's final email to the lawyer. "We just want what's best for him. He's not thinking clearly right now, and we're worried he's going to destroy everything we've worked so hard to build together. If we can just get temporary control until he's stable again, we can make sure he gets the help he needs and protect our family's future." Our family's future. They were going to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could legally steal my money. They were going to use my heart attack as evidence that I couldn't be trusted to manage my own finances. "The hearing's scheduled for next week," Eddie said quietly. "They filed the petition yesterday." "What do we do?" I asked. He smiled then, and it wasn't a nice smile. "We get ahead of this. I've already called your lawyer. By tomorrow morning, you'll have cease and desist orders filed against all of them, account freezes to prevent any unauthorized access, and legal protections that'll make this guardianship petition look like what it really is: a money grab from people who never gave a damn about your well-being." When the legal nuclear option failed, Sandra's clan decided to pivot to their backup plan: destroy my reputation so thoroughly that I'd crawl back to them just to make it stop. The whole thing started with what looked like a simple selfie from Ashley. No fancy filter, just her sitting in what appeared to be her car, looking like she'd been crying for hours. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive emotional manipulation. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones going through the hardest times. When someone you care about is hurting, they might lash out at the people trying to help them. All we can do is send love and hope they find their way back to the family that's always been there for them. Within hours, the post had been shared by Patricia, by William, by cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, by neighbors who probably couldn't pick me out of a police lineup but were suddenly deeply concerned about my well-being. But then, something beautiful happened. Someone, and I still don't know who, screenshot Ashley's old Instagram post from the family picnic, the one with the caption "Family Day Without the Drama" posted while I was in the hospital. They posted it as a comment on Ashley's crying video with the simple caption, "Interesting timing." Suddenly, people started doing the math. Ashley posts about having a drama-free family day without me while I'm in the hospital. A week later, she's making videos about how much she loves and worries about me. The screenshots spread faster than gossip at a church potluck. People started connecting the dots, asking questions, pointing out the timeline. The internet turned on them harder than a pack of wolves. Sponsors started dropping Ashley's boutique. Sandra's job put her on administrative review. William got asked to leave a client meeting when someone brought up that viral thread about the family trying to scam their son-in-law. Their perfect facade didn't just crack, it shattered completely, right there in public view for everyone to see. And the best part? They'd done it to themselves. But they had one final card to play. 3 days after I got home, a letter arrived by certified mail. The return address made my blood run cold. William Martinez, written in that old-school cursive handwriting. The envelope was thick, multiple pages of what felt like official documentation. It was a will. William's last will and testament, handwritten on legal letterhead and notarized. The document laid out the distribution of his estate with the precision of someone dividing up the crown jewels instead of a suburban house that was already in foreclosure and a 2003 Honda with a check engine light. According to this newly drafted will, all remaining assets would go to family members who maintained unity during times of crisis and stood together when others chose division. The final paragraph was the kicker. Until such time as he returns to the family and seeks proper reconciliation for the pain and division he has caused, my son-in-law shall receive nothing from this estate. Blood is thicker than water, but family unity is thicker than blood. When he chooses love over pride, he will be welcomed back into the fold with open arms and open hearts. The beautiful irony was that William was trying to use inheritance as bait, the promise of future wealth. to draw me back into their orbit. Except there was no wealth. The house was gone, foreclosed on because they'd been gambling with the mortgage payments. William's estate consisted of debt, broken dreams, and a collection of get-rich-quick schemes that had never quite panned out. He was offering me nothing and calling it everything. I called Eddie and read him the will over the phone. The silence that followed was so long I thought the call had dropped. "Grandpa, you still there?" "Son," he said finally, "that man is trying to bribe you with nothing and call it something." That's when I made the call that would end this once and for all. I called my lawyer and told him I wanted to file a permanent no-contact order against the entire Martinez family. No more phone calls, no more letters, no more manipulation disguised as legal paperwork. For the first time in 8 years of marriage, I was cutting the last tie. I didn't want William's inheritance. I didn't want their conditional love. I didn't want their family unity that only existed when I was writing the checks. I wanted freedom. The day I walked out of St. Mary's Hospital for the last time, Eddie was waiting for me in the parking lot with his ancient Toyota Camry. No fanfare, no dramatic music. Just an old man in a worn leather jacket ready to drive me toward whatever came next. We drove past the city, past the suburbs where Sandra and I had lived in our perfect little house with our perfectly screwed-up relationship. The further we got from civilization, the easier it became to breathe. The cabin turned out to be everything Eddie had promised. It wasn't some luxury mountain retreat, just a simple, honest building that had been built to serve a purpose instead of to impress anyone. Log walls that had weathered decades of mountain winters. A front porch that looked like it had been designed for sitting and thinking rather than posing for Instagram photos. "Owner's name is Bill," Eddie said, pulling my bags out of the trunk. "Retired park ranger. Lost his wife last year. Decided he wanted to move closer to his kids in Florida. Says the place has good energy." That first night in the cabin, I sat on the front porch and watched the sun set behind mountains that had been there long before my marriage and would be there long after Sandra had moved on to her next sufferer. I made dinner in a kitchen that was mine, in a house where nobody expected me to solve their problems or finance their dreams or apologize for having boundaries. For the first time in 8 years, I went to sleep without setting 17 alarms or making mental lists of whose crisis I'd need to handle the next day. I just slept like a normal human being who wasn't responsible for everyone else's happiness and financial security. 6 months into my new life, I'd developed what you might call a routine built around the radical concept of not giving a damn about other people's manufactured emergencies. I woke up when my body felt like waking up instead of when my phone started buzzing with demands for immediate financial assistance. The remote job had turned out to be everything Eddie had promised, and more. 40 hours a week of actual work instead of 60 hours of work, plus 20 hours of crisis management for people who confused poor planning with bad luck. Sandra's family hadn't given up entirely. Every few weeks, someone would test the boundaries of the no-contact order. Usually it came through distant relatives who'd been recruited as flying monkeys. Cousin Patricia would call to chat about family news and somehow work in a mention of how devastated Sandra was. Uncle Mike would send a Facebook message asking if I'd heard about William's latest health scare. My personal favorite was the Christmas card that somehow made it past my mail screening. A beautiful family photo with everyone gathered around a perfectly decorated tree in what looked like someone else's living room since they'd lost their house. The caption inside read, "Wishing you peace and joy this holiday season. You're always in our thoughts and prayers. Love, the Martinez family." The audacity was breathtaking. They'd literally tried to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my money, and now they were sending me Christmas cards about love and prayers. The latest attempt had come through Sandra's therapist. Apparently, Sandra had been seeing someone to work through the trauma of her marriage ending, and the therapist had suggested that closure might be helpful for both of us. The therapist had called me directly, which should have been my first red flag. "I understand you've been through a difficult time," the therapist had said. "Sandra has been working very hard to understand her role in the breakdown of your relationship, and she's made significant progress in therapy. She's hoping that you might be willing to participate in a joint session to work toward healing and closure." I'd politely declined, explaining that I'd found my closure in the mountains and didn't need any additional healing beyond the kind that came from not being treated like a human credit card. But here's what I'd learned in 6 months of actual peace. You don't negotiate with emotional terrorists. You don't engage with people who confuse love with exploitation. And you sure as hell don't feel guilty about protecting the life you've built from people who want to tear it down for their own benefit. They could keep their story. They could tell anyone who'd listen about the heartless husband who'd abandoned his family during their time of need. They could play the sufferer until the end of time. I had something better than their story. I had the truth. And the truth had given me peace. And peace, it turned out, was worth more than being loved by people who only loved me when I was useful.